My name is Marc Ryan. I'm Vice President of Global Growth for Trellis Data, an Australian artificial intelligence company.
Hi Marc, how are you?
I'm excellent. Really, really well, Marc. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for coming today.
You're very welcome.
I know who you are. Would you like to explain or tell a little bit about yourself to our audience?
Sure. So I've grown out of defence. So I was a submarine hunter for 15 years with the P3C Orions out of Edinburgh. Got married, we had 2 children, moved around quite a bit. And I was in the Air Force for about 25 years, specifically in intelligence and leadership work. And in that period, jumped out twice. Once I did an MBA when I was 27, and then I felt itchy feet, as you do when you finish an MBA. And everyone that's done an MBA would realise that it unsettles them a little bit. So I was unsettled. I wanted to conquer the world. And BAE Systems had a project manager in Saudi Arabia, based in Adelaide, to recruit aviation technicians before the Gulf War. And I took that project on. It was only ever meant to be a $1 million or $2 million project. And I drove that to 24 million in 11 months. And then decided I want to go back into the Air Force. So I ticked that box, really kicked that goal into touch. Came back into the Air Force. Air Force had me back instantly, which was pretty good. And then pretty much went through Air Force for quite some time. I was commanding officer of the Australian Joint Acoustic Analysis Centre, which is submarine acoustics, submarine warfare, a really specialist deep intelligence area where we send our submarines, what we do with them there and how good they are. I was executive officer for Electronic Warfare Squadron, where we do a lot of self-protection for the Australian air assets. That is, if another radar captures one of our aircraft, then we can counter that radar or counter that missile threat. Both leadership roles. And then I was also commanding officer of the Airman Aircrew Flying Training School, which is the Top Gun school for airman aircrew that were going to fly in the back of Orions, Wedgetail, Hercules, that sort of thing. So I pretty much in the Air Force grew up as a leader, commanding squadrons, and that gave you quite a skill set when you're leading warriors, I suppose. And you don't think of it at the time, Marc. It's just you do what's next. Air Force was really, really good for me in that every 2 years or so, they give you a brand new challenge. So it's either a promotion, so you're now no longer a flight lieutenant, which is a medium tier executive, to a squadron leader. So go and run this squadron. Okay, I've never done that before. So you have the skill set, they have the trust in you, so go and do it and learn. Yeah. And you do. And I met some incredible people in defence and in industry at that stage. And then I won the right to be on Malaysian Staff College, which is a senior executive officers course, international course in Malaysia, in Kuala Lumpur, as part of the defence attaché staff. So all of a sudden you're mixing with diplomats and you're mixing with other foreign defence agencies, and you get a really good network together. And this was back in 1995. And one of the rules was that if you took an overseas posting, you had to write a thesis or conduct an activity that actually left that country better off. So at that stage, total quality management was all the rage. It was rolling through Australia, the Toyota program, total quality management, doing things efficiently, the right things the right way. And I was quite a proponent of that in the Air Force at that stage. And I was working in Electronic Warfare Squadron where we were employing it to the best degree that we possibly could. And so when I went to Malaysia for the 12 months senior officer study course, I decided to do my thesis on total quality management in the Malaysian Armed Forces. Now, that gave me access to all their 3-stars, so their Chief of Defence, their Chiefs of Navy, Army and Air Force. And Malaysia was having quite an issue with maintaining the momentum of total quality management through their armed forces at that stage. And so my thesis was not only very well received, it was very well regarded that I was working on that. So I was pretty happy with that. came back into Directorate of Workforce Planning. So at that stage, Air Force was about 23,000 people. My budget was 720 million a year that I had to manage. And Defence was going under some significant reviews. So in that time, it was a matter of how do we assess every individual position in Air Force can it stay in uniform or can it be done by a public servant or a contractor? And so that was pretty much the goal. And the task was monumental. I had less than 6 months to evaluate 23,000 positions and defend or release them. And that's where I learnt the skill of accessing labour at no cost. So I didn't have a big team, but the task was monumental. So for example, if you take a fighter pilot in the Australian Air Force, there's a position above all of them that's a bit like the Top Gun school that you see in the movies. So there's a fighter combat instructor. These guys are the cream of the cream. They teach fighter pilots how to fight. So a bit like Maverick in Top Gun. I don't have to be a higher rank than you, but mate, if you can kill me, then you're better than me. And usually these guys don't get shot down at all. As they're teaching the young guns to come up, very, very much like what you see in Maverick. But you can't just buy one of those guys out of Qantas. So if someone resigns for whatever reason or gets hurt and has to leave, you have to grow a new one. And it's like 15 years experience to get to a fighter combat instructor, probably $5 to $7 million in just their personal growth training and progression through the Air Force. So these fighter combat instructors are seriously valuable assets. And so when you look across the entire Air Force, there's a range, everything from a cook and a guard and a dog handler, which are all very specific skill sets, right through to your fighter pilot instructors and those people that are going to move on to be the next Chief of Air Force. And so we had to get that right. So it was a bit of a quandary. So I contacted the Australian Bureau of Statistics. I said, hey, I need some assistance. And the guy says, well, what do you want? I said, well, I've got a pool of 23,000 workforce and people that aren't involved in workplace or workforce management. It's really a unique skill set that you develop quickly because it's not like any other job anywhere. And the Australian Bureau of Statistics said, we're between censuses at the moment and I've got 6 to 8 PhD statisticians that are free to help you if you want. So I thought, free labour, this is easy, wow. And anyway, they got us out of a very, very big hole. We were able to go to the Senate estimates and say, this is our figures. Air Force was culled the least compared to Navy and Army, and our numbers was very similar to Navy because we were able to justify. So that gave me a skill set of, what free labour or free assets is around. And at that stage, these PhDs from the Bureau of Statistics got a very, very good grounding in workforce planning, an area of statistics that just isn't out there. So these guys were blown away with the skill set that they grew in Air Force at the time. From there, I went to the Deputy Director of Plans, which at that time Timor was blowing up and the Australian government was looking to evacuate Australians everywhere between Australia and Penang. Mm-hmm. So, tens of thousands, possibly hundreds of thousands of Australians. And so how do you build a strategy to do that quickly? If Timor explodes and goes seriously, seriously bad, then you've got to get Australians out of that whole theatre of conflict for those that want to escape back to Australia quickly. So we had Qantas lined up and we had all the defence moving assets lined up and it was a significant task to plan for that. And luckily that didn't happen. Timor was quite well controlled by United Nations forces and the transition across to Timor as a state went through fairly smoothly. There's a range of other posts that I had, but on promotion to group captain, I was asked to be the executive officer for Tyndall, which is an F-18 fighter base. Very, very prestigious for a category of mine, to be then coming out of maritime and submarine hunting, to be given the XO ship of a fighter base. So I was a high flyer, pretty much. Except my wife said, we've moved so many times, and we were based in Canberra at that stage, and she said, I'm not going to Tyndall. And I said, oh, okay. And so I did a search of all my senior officer mates, and everyone that had done that had agreed to do a unaccompanied posting for 2 years weren't married anymore. So I thought, okay, well, that's might be good for the career, but the career is really only there to support the family, seriously. And I'd had a really good run in Air Force. So Christine's parents were from Adelaide, and they were ailing in their health. And so we made the decision, look, let's leave Air Force and come back. So I ran a very large retail business for 10 years, and we split that out to 3 separate companies and locations. And that went through to 2010. And then I left that. And so I was responsible in that of growing leaders inside that retail chain. And then when I left that, I went consulting, but consulting in industry. And my skill set then was really high-end leadership. So walking into a business, having a look at where they were, regardless of whether they were startup, mid-tier or quite mature, and then being able to help, using all my military and masters and experiential skill sets to sit down and say, okay, owner, let's move you forward. I had several jobs, because when you're in that role, some of the companies, Marc, they say, look, we just don't want you as a contractor. We want to buy you in. What's your salary? And what do you want? And so I was running high-end leadership courses on the side, not on the side, that was sort of mainstream. So I'd do some contracting jobs, and then I'd run high-end leadership. And out of that course, 2 or 3 of the directors of companies asked me to come and work for them. And so I did some part-time contracting. One of the roles was business development manager for FCT Flames. And what a lot of people don't realise, Marc, is that FCT Flames is the Olympic Games Flames company. It's based here in Adelaide. It did the Olympic Games cauldron that Cathy Freeman in Sydney lit the torch, or lit the cauldron in the year 2000. And because the Sydney Olympic Games were so successful in Australia, the Olympic movement pretty much adopted these Australian teams that were behind the scenes that made it so successful. Wow. So in Athens and all the Olympics since, there's very large Australian companies behind it pulling it off. So it was in 2015, 2014 that I joined as business development manager, and we grew by 400% in 18 months. Wow. And I'll tell you how I did that. And we won every single torch relay around the world in the lead up to the Summer Olympics in Rio, and we won both cauldrons in Rio. So it was the perfect storm. So how did I do that? So I was the only business development manager, and I looked at free labour. So how do you get free research labour of quality? So I found, using the Australian Bureau of Statistics experience, I reached out to the universities. And I said, do you have any students that need industry experience at the highest level? Because we were the Olympic Games. So just about every university has an industry engagement internship program at some level. It's usually 12 weeks, 1 day a week, which is 12 days of free labour per student. And you'd get the intern out, and they would help you do research, market research, and they would use their skill set. So there's 2 types of students that you can get from universities. One is a master's level student that's doing their MBA or their Masters of Comms or their Masters of Strategy that has come from industry. So they've done their undergraduate, they've gone out, cut their teeth, probably have 2, 4, 5, 10 years of industry experience or government experience, and then they go and do their masters, and they need internship into industry. And then you've got your undergraduates, so your engineers and your business of marketing, your graduate diploma and your bachelors of business that still need that industry experience, but they're younger. They don't have the wisdom on their shoulders as the masters do, but they think outside the box, and they're fresh and they're young and they want to cut teeth. So I worked out very early on that one intern just does your head in, because they're at your heels all the time. Mm-hmm. You've given me this task. I'll finish that, what next? I'll finish that, what next, you know? And so I realised that 1 is too hard. 2 is a little bit easier. And I settled on some secret sauce. My secret sauce was 6 students. 6 students as one time as a team. And you pick the natural leader out of the 6 and say, okay, you're the leader, here's the problem. We've got 12 weeks. So I've actually gone to 6 students, 12 full days of research in an industry that's got the Olympic Games. And all of you at the end of it can put, you did your internship with the Olympic Games Flames Company. Very, very powerful for them. Very, very powerful for us. So we grew 400% in 18 months. We were targeting also the Anzac Day because 2015 was the big Anzac centenary. And Australia was made off the back of Anzac Cove, pretty much. That's sort of where the Australian spirit culture, the biggest link is to our growth. Not landing in Australia, that's Australia Day, but I think the majority of people think Anzac Day is about it. That's where the true mettle of the Australian soldier really came out, and the respect of Australian defence and soldiers and the Australian ethos certainly came out around Anzac Day. So we were leading up to that. And then in 2018, some people in defence that knew me really well contacted me and said, Marc, you know, because I was contracting at that high-end leadership and I was mentoring leaders for pretty decent money. And the Centre for Defence Industry Capability contacted me and said, would you like to be one of our senior defence industry advisors? There were only 8, so I was going to be one of an elite group that looked at SMEs wanting to engage or be involved in the defence supply chain for the primes and for defence across Australia. So you had to have master's qualifications, you had to have been a significant contractor to industry and defence, and you had to have served. So, because you had to understand the defence. Now, you could have been a public servant, an ex-public servant, and I won that job, and that was the Centre for Defence Industry Capability, and I was mentoring in those days, I don't know, probably 20 or 30 companies at a time in leadership. And then the Centre for Defence Industry Capability morphed in about 2022 after COVID through to the Office of Defence Industry Support. So we were the elite business advisors across defence industry. And it was really powerful. We were mentoring companies up to 250 million turnover a year, their boards. And what I found was defence industry is really risk averse. So we have the Defence Industry Security Program, DISP, that companies have to go through to bring their level of awareness up. Cyber security is very, very high, because if you want to attack a country's defence assets, you can go through the weakest link, which might be in the supply chain, building the missiles and the weapon systems. But a lot of your listeners won't be interested in the weapons side of defence, but it's industry and it's innovation. And so a lot of them were really risk averse. So I learned a few things, and we were very powerful as a group of business advisors with industry. So before I even walked into an industry or into an SME, I knew 3 things were highly likely not to be true. One is strategic planning. So in business, you should have a good strategic plan that you use daily. You should have a vision and a mission. Where am I going? It's a bit like you going to the airport and hopping on an aeroplane and the captain says, well, where do you want to go today? Let's just see how much fuel we've got and where we can go. And you go, well, hang on, no, I want to go to Melbourne and I need to be there in an hour and a bit, and you're going to land this aeroplane on a cricket pitch of bitumen, 700 kilometres away. So I can't afford you just to be taking me anywhere. Yet 95% of businesses do that every day. So for your listeners, why is that? It's difficult. It's easy to stick to your knitting. Engineers are the worst. Engineers...
Thank you.
No. Engineers have a technical expertise that they see that a business can spurn out of. So they start their business. Yeah. And they get very good. And it grows and it grows and it grows. but they don't have a strategic plan that they work to that shows them where they want to go in the future. So they don't have a flight plan. No pilot takes off in any aeroplane without a flight plan, yet 90% or more of business leaders do it every single day.
And just on that point, do you think that Australian culture has any influence on the mindset of these engineers?
No,
or
I think
it's two separate things.
I think it's universal.
It's universal.
Because, so in the past, a few years ago, you'd get a consultant in and he'd spend a day at some resort with you and they'd work up the strategic plan, right? And they'd spend all day and you'd get the vision right and you'd get the strategic plan right. Right, now we know where we're going. And they get back to the office and they'd have to catch up from the work of the day before. And the strategic plan goes into the drawer. And then I'd come along and say, have you got a strategic plan? Yeah, yes, I've got a strategic plan. We did it 18 months ago and it's in this drawer. Okay, so you've gone through the strategic planning process, right? But you're not living and breathing it. There's a really good author called Vern Harnish, and he's got a book called Scaling Up. And part of his success is a one-page strategic plan. Put down your flight plan on one page. What do we have to achieve today? What do we have to achieve this week? What do we have to achieve by the end of the month? And I'm a very strong proponent of 90-day planning. Okay, so 90 days, 90 days, 90 days. Right? If you can get that right, you create an environment of growth. So my skill set is...
Sorry, before you move on, because I think what you're telling here is not only for like businesses. I think in personal life, if you have that mindset... Absolutely. So 95, 98% of every business I went into, before I even walked in the door, I would say they most likely won't have a strategic plan. 98% worth, which is really high. The next area of business that they will do very poorly is business development. And that's a skill set on its own. That's quite unique. Everybody says, oh, you're an account manager, a salesman, or a business development person. But a good BD can multiply the revenue of a company tenfold if it's done right. And the third area, not done correctly, is marketing. So what's a good example? Let's go back to the engineers. Okay, so who did your website? Oh, we did. Oh, really? So, okay, so that's why it looks like crap. Seriously. Have a look at the websites that are self-made. Even software engineers build crappy websites because they're not in that niche market of website design, movement in website. They're not a master of websites. So what I've found in industry is that there's very few masters of their craft in industry. So if you say to me, what's my skill set? I'd say to you, I'm a master of leadership and I'm a master of business development. So I'd be a sensei of business development. Out of probably 300 companies that I've mentored, coached and worked with over the last 10, 15 years, there's probably 5 business development people that I would hire from my company. So what does that say? What does that say for the rest? Well, I've been to networking functions where you'd walk into the networking event and there'd be, 100, 200 people there. And there's always opportunity in every one of those events because CEOs come along as well as their business development people. And you walk through the door and very few people work the crowd. So you'd see a group of business development people there, you see another group there, you see a couple of shift around, and an hour and a half later when you leave, those same people are there. They walk through the door and say, oh, Marc, I know you, you're my friend. I'll go and let's start chatting. And they feel uncomfortable to work the crowd, but I work the crowd. And the few people that I would hire for my business work the crowd. It's a skill set. Where is the hidden opportunity of this meeting? If I'm going to give myself 1 hour here, who have I not met? So of the CEO space. Who do I already know that I don't need to speak to today? So yes, oh, hi Marc, sorry, excuse me, I've got to go. And how do I build my network of value? So if you and I were there, now you're head pretty much programmer in IoT Consultants, correct? Yes.
So if we went in together, I'd see you and I'd say, who are you looking for here? You'd say, well, I'm not really sure. And say, okay, come with me. I know Jim Wally. Jim Wally's here
the previous chief entrepreneur for South Australia, also board chair for Nova Systems. Let's come and meet him. Andrew Downs, owner of Sage Automation. Let's go and meet him. And I would smash you in. And I'd say, look, hi, Jim. Just interrupting for a second. Marc Chariot's here. He does this, digital twins. Brilliant for Nova Systems. You need to know about him. Swap cards. Now let's go. We move on to the next one. So you've made contact with Jim. You've swapped business cards. Business cards is another thing. So with business cards, the number of business development people I meet at a networking function that, I'm sorry, Marc, I've run out of cards. What do you mean you've run out of cards? I'd sack you. If you're my business development and you're going to a known networking function and you've run out of cards, I'd sack you. Just like that. And I tell them to their face. It's a leadership thing. It's a shame thing. And some of the guys go, oh, I've got a digital one. What a load of rubbish. So why is it a load of rubbish? So we're here talking about AI, ML and digital transformation. And here I am poo-pooing a digital card on your phone. So I meet Hamish, right? And there's 100 people that I'm going to meet that night. And Hamish says, I haven't got a card. Here's my digital phone. 6 or 7 out of 10 times it doesn't work seamlessly straight away. So you have to screw around with it and you get it. Oh, okay, so I've got your details. He goes into my phone. The next day, I really want to meet that guy that spoke to me about this project. What was his name? And I go through all my business cards and it's not there. And so, and there's a trick with business cards. So when you've got a business card, so with a business card, there's 2 things I'm looking from you. I'm looking for revenue and I'm looking for facilitators. So are you going to buy from me? That's important. So the top right-hand corner, I will bend on the card down, only by a couple of millimeters. I'll bend it down flat and I know that person is money for me. So we're talking about contracts and he's the procurement officer for Boeing and we've been talking about Boeing. So that's money. And if I don't bend that one down, say he is Reg Carruthers from Defence SA. He's never going to buy anything from me, but he can put me in touch with the people like the chief procurement officer for Boeing. So I would bend the bottom right-hand corner up. So when I get home from a networking function, I'll throw all the cards on the table and I try to get the most cards out of anybody at any function. It's a sort of a pride thing. And it's not about scooting around and just meeting as many people as you can. It's about having a short, intellectual and value-adding conversation with the person, swapping business cards, and then moving on. And if there's a person that I need to give greater value to, because it's a two-way street. So I've got a huge skill set, and sometimes the person that you introduce to will say, "Oh, well, you know, what do you think about this?" And then you can give value for free to them to bring them up, because I've found that your network grows fastest when you give more than you take. And there's a lot of BD people out there that are just me, take.
I have to say, because I think you're avoiding a big chunk of your capability, because you're coming from a technical background yourself.
Yes.
You're one of the rare business development or leaders who fully understand, because I do work with you.
Yes.
And I don't need to explain technical elements to you twice.
No.
So you get the technical things straight away.
Yes.
You don't need to be told twice. And
yes.
Sometimes you just don't need even explanation. Okay. And I know from my experience is that when you do have a technical mind, it is difficult to switch towards a people's mind.
Yes, so that's true.
There are two different mindsets completely, and it takes a lot of energy.
A lot of people don't understand that either.
What training have you gone through? What have you done that you gain, that you can switch from two world? you know?
So that's a really good question. So first up, I was hunting submarines. So the craftiest fox that you can ever hunt is a human. And he's in a submarine.
Sure, yes.
He's in a submarine with 80 people trying not to be found.
Correct.
So in my service, I've tracked and kept hold of Russian submarines. They're Charlie-class nuclear submarines, Kilo-class submarines, and a whole range of them. I've certainly tracked and attacked and been very successful and very unsuccessful against Australian submarines. We do a lot of trials to build their skills up in evading us and our aircraft skills in tracking and attacking. And also I've been one of the most successful trackers of a Los Angeles class super quiet boat. It was a set scenario, and his signature just didn't exist. And we had a new capability in the Barra sonobuoy, an Australian produced sonobuoy.
How do you find it is a secret, isn't it?
How do you find it?
I believe it is a secret, but anyway.
Yeah, no. It's we tracked this bugger on broadband noise. So as the submarine was going through the water goes down the hull and creates noise over the fittings and rivets and all that sort of stuff.
Yes.
So there's a flow noise.
Correct.
And the Barra sonobuoy was seriously good at tracking flow noise. Now, most submarines are tracked by discrete noise. So a pump makes a sound, and you might not be able to hear it much, but it does penetrate through the hull, and the strength of that signal, the further it goes out, is detectable by the sonobuoys that we drop. Anyway, this Los Angeles class submarine had no discrete noise whatsoever. Seriously quiet, didn't exist. Except when it moved, it created flow noise. And our sonobuoys went zonk, and we had it. And so it was going up and down the bathy layers. It was doing everything that a cunning fox submariner could do, and we had a 4-hour serial with him. And when you attack a submarine in a joint exercise, you drop two small hand grenades of sound. So it hits the water and goes bang, and it shows the submariner, hey, you've been caught. And you do 2 of them that says torpedoes in the water. So we attacked him every 15 minutes for 4 hours. And we had an admiral on board, and the admiral said, you guys, this is my hand-picked submariner. It's the quietest boat we've got, and you've been telling porkies. I don't believe that you've had him. And the captain said, Admiral, do your submariners come up on time? And the admiral said, my submariners come up to the second of the end of the 4-hour serial. And the captain said, well, in that case, your submarine should be coming up about there. And he pointed out the window, out the cockpit, and up came 2 masks. So the admiral was on board looking to assess the effectiveness of the Barra buoy against nuclear submarines. We proved the point very, very well. Anyway, we don't have the Barra buoys anymore, so we're back to conventional submarine hunting. But you asked me, how did I build that skill set? So
how did you transform yourself how do you transform yourself from daily technical side to a people side?
So the skill set of hunting was one. The MBA really opened my eyes. People say have two or three sorts of views about MBAs. Or they're rubbish, or they're brilliant, or whatever. It doesn't matter. It gives you focused education across a range of subjects that broadens your mindset. And when I went back into Air Force, I was an entirely different person. And we weren't doing much in the way of academic studies, organisational behaviour, finance and accounting. We weren't doing any of that in Air Force. Leadership, business development, marketing, all those sorts of skill sets that in an MBA you really only touch at a shallow level. But it was enough to totally unsettle me and want more. And so that thirst for learning grew. And then I started looking at the people that I had working for me and how do I grow those people. And then I became, well, if you're a leader of a squadron and you've got 300 people, how do you make them prepared for 2 jumps in their career, not 1? Or not just keep the seat warm. A lot of leaders just keep the seat warm. Well, I was there for 2 years and I loved my job as the CEO, but it was a good fun job. But actually they didn't add value to any of those people working there. So that was a change, and I really strove. And also trying to find a way around things. So when I was in workforce planning, which we already discussed, it was a monumental task. And getting free labour, no one gets free labour like that, let alone PhDs, let alone from the Australian Bureau of Statistics. And so that taught me the skill set that there is always a way. And I found that a lot of leaders build their own brick walls. For example, I can't do that because, oh, rubbish, of course you can. Why? Well, in your mind, you can't do that, so you never will be able to. So I developed the art of the impossible. For example, the Olympic Games Flames Company, 400% growth. How do you do that in the Olympic Games? A very niche market area. We did that. We found a way. Even at BAE Systems, when I was looking after the Saudi Arabian project, and took a $1 to $2 million project to $24 million in 11 months. Totally unheard of. Found a way. So it very much depends on that. So I became a follower of Tony Robbins. Tony Robbins in the 80s and 90s, was a coach to billionaires. He was really on fire, and he was giving a lot of psychometric sort of opportunities and activities that weren't in the local academic or leadership vernacular. And I learnt DISC analysis, psychometric testing. So I would put all my new staff through a DISC psychometric test. Why? Because it would show me exactly who they were. Everyone's two people. So what's a good example here? So when you're going dating, right, and you're having a first meeting with a prospective partner, whether it be male or female. So there's that level of excitement, flirtiness, fun, love, the James Bond effect, where you are the best person that you're putting forward to that other person. 6 months later, when you've got a cold and you're in bed and you're throwing up and you're hungover and your partner sees you at the worst possible state, right, you're a different person. You are, so if you take James Bond, you've got James Bond, who is the actor Daniel Craig, right? So if you talk to Daniel Craig's wife, she'll tell you he doesn't drive very well, right? And he certainly can't shoot. He doesn't quite like guns. But in the James Bond movies, when he puts the James Bond suit on, he's the fastest race car. He never dies. He gets all the good-looking girls, and you can't kill him. And he's James Bond. So everyone is that person. But when you can see that in a DISC analysis report before you interview them, so a lot of people with understanding the human psyche in business. Firstly, most SMEs don't do psychometric testing of their future employees. Well, that's like Russian roulette. You don't know what type of persona that you're going to get. The person, and I see this a lot in engineering. So I see this a lot at hires in engineering firms. So if you think about it, if you're the owner of your company and you're at an interview and you're deciding which one of these candidates are going to be employed by you, and you might be looking for a business development manager in your big engineering firm, and you get an engineer that comes in that thinks he's a business development manager, he's going to respond to you like an engineer would, and two peas in a pod. He's like me. I like him. But I'm really buying a business development person. So a business development person in the form of the jungle is like a zebra. It's got stripes, waggy tail, goes, it will dance on a table, will do the karaoke singing, a little bit extroverted, not afraid to lose contracts and things like that, and a different type of beast than an engineer. Yet engineering companies all the time hire engineers. And you're going to say, a marketing manager, right, okay, so would you dance on tables? No. What do you know about marketing? Oh, the engineering side of it. You're marketing the technical side of it. Okay, so your boss is obviously an engineer. So I use engineering as an easy example because it is. But when you go to other companies that are not engineering, you see exactly the same. So people hire people that are like them. Whereas when you look at a psychometric test like DISC analysis, what happens is, so I would put an ad out there. We're looking for a BDM or a finance guy or whatever. It doesn't really matter. And you'd get 500 resumes through. And you get from the sublime to the ridiculous. This is person's 90-year-olds in Alice Springs. We're in Adelaide. This person's 15-year-old and she's in Tasmania. We're in Adelaide. Got no experience. So you're basically culling people from their resumes. And the point of a resume is it's to get you to interview. And so you cull it down to 5 or 6 of the key resumes that you think are perfect for the job. Now, every resume lies. Absolutely guaranteed. The question is by how much? So if you put those 5 that you're possibly going to interview, you put those resumes aside, then I would contact each one of them and say, Marc, you've applied for the position that I've got. Would you do this psychometric test for me? It only takes 15 minutes. We'll pay for the bill and shoot it to me, because as soon as I get that, I'll be able to tell you if you're on the interview selection panel and when we'll interview you. Everybody does it. But it shows me the James Bond and the Daniel Craig. So I might be looking for Daniel Craig. James Bond walks through the door, gives me his best polished presentation, or hers, and I've already seen that the Daniel Craig is the one that's going to wake up in the morning hungover and throwing up and whatever, and that's the person I want, not the James Bond that's going to disappear after he gets to know me well. So the difference with a new hire is that they move generally from the James Bond mode through to the Daniel Craig mode in about 3 months. So if I work with you every day, right, it's like your partner with you every day. After the flirty, courty, the romance, the honeymoon, they really start to get to know you, you know. Hey, you snore when you sleep. That's irritating the hell out of me now. You don't put the toilet seat down, you know, but I didn't before. Why is it an issue now? It's an issue now. Why do you eat like that? So it comes out when you're working in a company after about 3 months. And so all of a sudden, the number of company owners that go, you know, I thought he was brilliant or she was brilliant at interview, but now I wish I hadn't hired her. Why? Because they're not looking at the unique person. Every person is absolutely unique. And if you get a picture of their disc profile before you go to interview, at interview you can really ask some pointed questions and get to the nuts and bolts of the person that you're looking for. So I found that to be one of the most useful tools in my consultancy bag of tricks. Why? Because when an individual does that for me, then I know how to talk to them. For example, it shows me the 7 values, the one that I use, shows me the 7 values of an individual. So, do you like money?
Of course everyone does.
Good. Yeah. And I like money. Yeah. But where are we? Do you pick up cans in the street? Are you like Chinese, you know, where money's everything, money is life type of things? Or are you're average Australian and, you know, not hunting money, but, you know, you like money, you want money, you know you need money, but you're not hunting for that next 10,000 and rich. How much is rich? Correct. You know, $1 million a year is rich, sure is, until you've been getting $1 million for a while and you want to buy that jet that's 50 million. So it's all a matter of perspective. But if you treat each human being that you work with as a unique individual, you connect with them like that.
So Marc, you did touch about some of the great quality of how you select people and how you try to build teams. Before I jump into that, I want to actually mention to our audience, when you say free labor, you're actually not free laboring people. The opportunities that you're giving people, it's great because they're learning through those experiences, because they get the chance to work people who, first of all, exposed to projects that they would not get into the real life that easily. Furthermore, you're giving them access to people who have extensive knowledge in that field. Okay,
very important point.
I mean, for myself, I've done a lot of free laboring. Okay, but I don't see it as a free labor, because I've seen it as an opportunity that I could learn. And if I wanted to actually learn that knowledge, it would have cost me, you know, a lot of money, which yes. I got it for free at the yes. same time. So that's one point. But the other point that I've found through this experience is that the more knowledgeable people become, the more experienced they become, and it's not necessarily with the age. It's just about the mental statement. The humbler they become, the easygoing they become, the more opener they become. I mean, the great example is you yourself, with the vast knowledge and experience. The first time I saw you, I could not believe someone like you is so open and easygoing and friendly and trying to help and do all these things. How do you see it? I mean, and I see a lot of younger engineers coming into the industry, and I don't want to use that, but I mean, because I'm observing that it's not that much openness, and you know, there is always that mindset that, you know, I'm better than you, you know, so it's not that team playing mindset. You know, I don't want to say ego, but you know, a bit of an ego is there as well. So how do you see that? How do you find that yourself? Because you have seen it firsthand.
That's a really good question. Egos get in the way, regardless of the industry. But if someone has got a big ego, they deny themselves the opportunity to look outside the view. And it's often that wider view where you kill giants. Seriously, take big steps. Let me come back to the bit about the people. So the people side of it is really, really important. And when you're commanding a squadron or leading an engineering business or an accounts business or SMEs, you very quickly get into the role where everyone's the same. You know, males or females, you're just workers, you're all my employees, and you're all the same. But actually they're not. The values, which I explained before, can seriously identify how you treat people. And if you can treat people the way they need to be treated, you can move mountains. What's a good example? So one of the values is a bit like micromanaging. So some people like to be micromanaged, other people don't like to be micromanaged. Give me a vision and I'll fulfill it for you beyond your wildest dreams. Otherwise, give me a vision and you haven't given me quite enough data or detail of what you want. So give me 3 or 4 steps and I'll move mountains for you. If you know the difference of a worker or an employee in that space, you can always play to their strength. And another one is some people don't like notoriety. So I'm quite comfortable in myself. I can talk to you in front of a camera. I can get up and give a presentation. And there are other people that absolutely fear that. And it's called, it's sort of, I call it the John Howard effect. John Howard loved being in front of the cameras, talking, but a lot of people don't. So for example, in my leadership team, I might find that there's a young executive female, we're going to brief the Premier. And I might say, okay, well, you know, you should do this. You should do this because it will be good for your professional development. And you can say you've briefed the Premier. And she might say, oh, Marc, I don't want to brief the Premier. And I say, no, it will be really good for you. So I'm overriding her for what I want out of her and how to train her and bring her up. And she might say, no, I don't want to do it. Well, if I make her do it, 2 things. She'll do a stunning job. Second thing, I've pushed her to the precipice of her fear like no other leader has. She would never, ever forgive me for that. So that's a learning of values. And if I don't know that value chain of hers, one of the other values that it shows you is thirst for learning. So can you imagine if I'm hiring a young intern engineer that doesn't know that these tests exist and doesn't know that I can see the values? There's one value called theoretical, which is about thirst for learning. Some people just have such a thirst for learning, and I was one of those, I think, MBA, learning from everything, and others don't. So if you've got someone that doesn't really want to learn, and you can see that as a value of theirs, and you're going to hire them into your company, what's that tell you about where you're going to see them in 6 months' time? You know, they haven't really gelled here. They haven't picked up this. They haven't picked up that. Not because they're lazy or they're slow. They just don't give a rat's. You know, but I don't need to know that. I don't want to know that. And so these values pull. So, and also when it comes to money, when you want to reward people. So you like money and I like money. And as a leader, you've done a really good job. I want to reward you. And I'll give you a voucher or a meal or some level of financial remuneration as a reward. And if your value is not the same as mine for money, I don't care about money. I've got a good salary. You know, what are you giving me more money for? If only you'd given me a book, because my highest value is thirst for learning. Right? Why don't you give me something that I really value? And you can't tell that. So with these psychometric tests, HR departments love them. They'll do a major Myers-Briggs on you or some sort of level, and then they scoop those results into their world, the HR world. And oh no, the manager, the executive, oh you don't live in this world. We know who Marc Chariot really is. We've got it here, right? But your managers and the owner of the business don't get to see that. And so I see that an awful lot. So just about every business I know rarely treats each of their staff as that unique individual that they are. And when you do, you have a connection with that person that is just beyond belief. And they will go over the top for you. So if it was Anzac and we had to storm the beach, these are the types of people that will storm the beaches with you. Why? Because you've treated them in a way that just gels with them, treating them as a person that no one else has really recognised. And you can see that in that DISC report. So let's just put that aside. So understanding exactly who humans are for their uniqueness, and also challenging them in the right way. We mentioned before free labour. Okay, so that's pretty much a throwaway term. I like to add high value for anyone that I interact with. So we had, at FCT Flames, we had these groups of interns coming in. I told you I had groups of 6. My role as their mentor, yes, they came in and they did valuable research for us, was to have them leave with seriously value-added experience out of those 12 days with our industry. So it's one thing to put, I did my internship with the Olympic Games Flames Company, but I would go out of my way to mentor them, tutor them, pass on my experience, so value add. So one course we had, which is really interesting, was the FCT Flames was also with a company that did slow combustion, the big burners that go in cement factories, right? And FCT Flames was an international company. FCT International was an international company. And in the Flames, I had a team of 6 Saudi students, foreign students, international students, in at the university. I think it was University of South Australia at that stage. And they came across to do an internship with me on Olympic Games Flames. And you know what? These guys just didn't get it. There were 3 women, three young men, and they were struggling with the Olympic Games concept and all of that. And I said to them, well, look, you're not getting value out of me, and I'm not getting value out of you. What else could we do? Why don't you do a research on the cement industry in Saudi Arabia? And we were 6 weeks into the 12 weeks. And at the end of each internship, they had to present to the board. Anyway, these kids found $20 million worth of business opportunity out of the Saudi Arabian cement market for FCT International that was beyond belief. They had family connections. They knew who was in the zoo. They were able to network with anybody who was anybody in the cement industry, and yet I didn't see that when I was talking to them about FCT Flames. So it's finding where the value is for the interns. It's finding a way to give them absolute value. So it's not free labour. It's free labour with high value. But these guys did incredible research. And every team that I've had, I think you'll find if you went and chatted to them afterwards, the majority of them would say, oh, that was an awesome internship. So there's a lot of companies out there that take on interns, and yet it's not an awesome experience for the intern. So why take them on? Yes, you might get 120 hours of somebody doing something for you that you're not paying for, but if you're not giving maximum back for the internship, then it's a failed relationship. They might choose not to work with you. I would have had, out of all my interns, and so in the 400% growth, we had about 6 teams in the year.
Wow.
So that's 36 students all doing significant research, all adding significant value to our growth. Growth is a really interesting topic. So I'm not sure who your audience is, but growth. Let's talk about growth. In industry, just about every company I know plays it safe. What do you mean by that? So they will say, I would say to them, what's your goal for achievement this year, this financial year? And they go, $10 million. Okay. What was it last year? $9 million. And the year before that, $8 million. Okay, so what's your budget for next year? What are you expecting the next year? It'll be maybe $11 million. That 10% is rife across industry. Now, I'm not sure who ever taught people that. And I would say, well, why don't we go for 20 million? And they go, what? 20 million? We've never done that before.
It's only from there
Yeah, but $20 million, $20 million in a year, well, we've never done that before. Yeah, but you've never tried. What if you fail miserably and only achieve 16 million? What if you fail really bad and get to 13 million? And growth is a double-edged sword. So, for example, revenue. So you're doing a $10 million, your IoT is doing $10 million, right? And I come in and I say to you, well, let's grow. I can get you to $13 million tomorrow. I just do a fire sale. So you look at revenue and you must look at profit. So when we talk about growth, I talk about at least doubling your revenue in 12 to 18 months and increasing your EBIT or your profit by 1, 2 or 3 percentage points. Well, that's quite difficult, but it's not unattainable. The problem is no one in industry tries. They just sit back and then they wonder, life is comfortable. So where is it on your vision? And so, you own a business and you say to someone, okay, so you're a business owner, all right? Why have you got the business? And I say, because I love engineering. No, you don't. I'm great at this estimating. No, it's not. You're in business to make profit so that you can run the business the way you want. So some people say, that's not true. I say, okay, Marc, your business, right? $10 million a year. So every month for the next 10 years, you're going to lose $5,000 a month. Guaranteed. Here it is. Every month for the next 10 years, $5,000 a month. So yes, you'll make your $10 million, but you'll actually lose $5,000. How long will you be in that business? Not very long. You might say, I can suffer it for a month or two. And then the wife says to you, or your partner says to you, well, how much did we make that month? It cost us an extra $5,000. I had to pay salaries, I had to pay this, I had to pay that. So businesses are only in business to fund the activity that they want to do, right? And then it gets out of control. So when you're doing 10 million, 20 million, 30 million, 100 million, you've got such a hierarchy, such a structure that it's like an elephant moving through the jungle. Very difficult to change. So people look to buy up companies. So let's do mergers and acquisitions. Let's try and grow ourselves that way. So you can grow double, treble, 5 times, 10 times even. So if you said to me, Marc, I want to tenfold my business in 12 to 18 months, is that possible? The answer is yes. There's a secret formula. I know it, I have it, and I get a lot of companies come to me and say, Marc, can you grow us? And the answer is yes, I can. Once you know that formula, and it's a set formula, it's a bit like, can you build a bridge? As an engineer, can you build the Sydney Harbour Bridge? And the engineers get down and they work it all out and they say, yes, we can do it. Can I grow a business tenfold? Yes, I can do it. So I have the skill set. Engineers don't have the skill set. Most of your audience won't have the skill set. Most of your audience is risk averse. If I doubled and went from 10 million to 20 million, how would the back office cope? I've been to companies where I've mentored them and business development people have said, look, I've knocked back contracts. What do you mean you've knocked back contracts? Well, the back office can't handle it. They're full at the moment. But hang on, that's not your call. So if I'm a $10 million business and you're my BD guy and you come in and say, Marc, I've just knocked back a $5 million contract because you can't handle it out the back, that's not your call. I could subcontract that $5 million worth of business to someone else. I could call up my mate and say, hey, can you come and partner with us and share the profits, but I need to get another $5 million out of my activity. That's the CEO's call. That's the owner's call.
It's very interesting that you're mentioning that point because I've come across that problem a lot within the industry. What stops people to do that? Because that's...
It's lazy, it's easy. In my experience, the majority of leaders, whether they be leading the business or a supervisor or a manager, take the easy route. They build walls. The back end can't cope. They're already at breaking point. So there's my wall. We can't take that job. So people do that everywhere, even from the point of view of, should I let this person go or should I keep them? Most owners do themselves a big injustice by keeping people that are wrongly suited for their business and their job and their culture way too long. And in fact, you shouldn't be sacking people. You should be saying, how can I help you get to a job that you will absolutely enjoy. And when you do the psychometric test, you get a feel for what type of employment would really work. So if you've got a creative person, someone that would be good at filmmaking, blogging, journalism, and they're in an engineering role because they fell through that at school, you've got a square peg in a round hole. And they're never going to be happy in the engineering company. But if you can say, oh, look, you're really a creative person and you're in engineering, why don't I put you into BD and marketing, which is creative in my business? No owner does that. No executives really look outside the box to maximise the human interaction with the people you've got working for them. So that's a skill set that I bring. Yes, go on.
And how, we just want to step back a little bit, because that is your point of difference from how the industry is functioning at the moment, because you see the big picture, okay, compared to the companies that at the moment they just want to pick the easy way or being risk averse.
In general, I suppose industry, it ebbs and flows. Correct. We have economic crises.
Yes.
If you're in defence, we have the valley of death.
Correct.
We had a very strong defence budget from the Liberals, right? And they sacked the French submarine contract. There's a lot of controversy about that, and there's a lot of viewpoints about that, and there's no correct viewpoint one way or the other. Personally, I think it was a very good decision. I'll talk to you more about that later. And at the moment, Labor's in, and Labor has a different agenda. Labor looks after social services, education, a whole range of different flight plans. Doesn't include defence. So defence has been stripped right back. So if you want to neuter a defence industry, the best thing that you can do is have a review. We had the Defence Strategic Review. It went for a long time. And then out of that, we were expecting announcements of what would happen with the ships. Adelaide is waiting on the warship decisions. That didn't come. There's going to be a naval review. So let's review what the fleet requirements are. All the time, the tension in the South China Sea is growing to the point where the Chinese Navy are operating at a reckless pace in general. And there's examples where Australian assets, so I used to fly P3s, and we would do regular patrols out of Butterworth across to the Spratly Island Group, South China Sea, just looking at those atolls that are owned by 10, 12, 14 countries. So Brunei, Indonesia, Philippines, Vietnam, they all own that. And they're all a partnership there, as is China. And some of the world's largest oil and gas reserves sit under the South China Sea. And so China builds a very, very large defence capability on these little islands, to the point where they're pushing back the other nations, and ownership or control is 9/10 of the law, and they're taking that. So if there's going to be, so 3 years ago or 2 years ago, I think Scott Morrison and the US Biden announced that we are expecting some level of conflict in the South China Sea, possibly over Taiwan, within 3 years. So Australia has gone on an 18, nearly 2-year review of a review of a review. And if you listen to the announcements today in defence, the Labor government is taking a further $2.7 billion away from defence after already taking out $7 billion. And the focus is on nuclear warships, nuclear submarines, which is 10, 20 years away, and missiles. And our own manufacture of missiles will take a year or two. So the decisions about the warships, and I'm not trying to be political here, I'm trying to be apolitical. I'm just I'm a defence member, ex-defence member, that is seeing defence go through one of its hardest times. In the defence industry, go through one of its hardest times, and I've seen several of these cycles. And it seems to be more prevalent under Labor than it is under Liberal. But that's just the way nations grow. Correct. So at the moment, it's very, very difficult to be in defence industry. But very few companies are specifically 100% defence industry focused. They do a bit of agriculture or medical tech or construction. So most companies have a foot in several industries. So if mining's up and defence is down, you balance the books that way. It's very difficult if your sole business is on shipbuilding and shipbuilding stopped. The government is paying for the Collins class submarine update, and I'm very conscious that your listeners might not want this conversation to be so defence focused.
Look, I mean, it would be great to sort of have this conversation in a separate session because there's so much detail into this that I think if you're just gonna touch it, we're not gonna get into the details of it,
okay.
which is really
happy
valuable. But coming back to the initial discussion that you were mentioning about it, defense industry and defense, and also shortcomings that is all happening, and also the probability of the conflict that everyone is talking about it. And people like you with your vision have seen this coming.
Yes.
From far away. Okay. And you still didn't let it go. You were still in. You went to the defense. You served in defense as a uniformed personnel, and then you didn't let it go either. You went to the defense industry, and you're still helping the defense industry. What was your motivation? Why did you come to this industry?
Again, another really good question. So, life is serendipitous. So you never really know what you're going to be doing next year or the year after. Until it happens, right? And it can be as simple as being impacted by a tragic situation, or not getting the job that you wanted, or getting married. A whole range of things influence that. So my journey. So I always wanted to fly. I wanted to be a pilot. Absolutely wanted to be a pilot. And I was flying gliders when I was 16, 17. Absolutely loved it. So I was focused on joining the Air Force. Joined the Air Force on a pilot's course. So I was doing really, really well on the pilot's course. Also had a good girlfriend at that stage and got glandular fever. Now, glandular fever affects you and affected me, and so I was put off the pilot's course. I only ever wanted to fly.
Wow.
So then I got over my glandular fever, and then I went back to Air Force and said, hey, I was a pretty good student, can I come back on? And they said, no, not for pilot's course. Would you like to be a navigator or what was called an airborne electronics officer? So technical electronics. Loved that idea. So I said, I'll take the airborne electronics officer, which was a really good stream for me. So I duxed the course, picked up 4 out of the 5 prizes. So the leadership prize, the academic prize, the prize for excellence, and all of that sort of stuff. And then I went to the squadrons, and I came across to 11 Squadron, which was flying P3C Orions, hunting submarines as what we called a young bog rat. So big eyes, no experience, got out of training, and they draw a line because that means nothing now. Okay, so you got through training, big deal. Now you're going to learn how to hunt people in submarines, and you're going to be the eyes of the nation. And I grew up through the squadrons, became a standards officer where you train others and teach others. Had 5,000 hours, anything from hunting submarines at the worst of night, in the worst conditions, right through to open ocean surveillance, search and rescue, saving people that got lost in a boat or in trouble. And it was an absolutely exhilarating career. But mind you, 80% of the flying, 60% of the flying was mind-numbingly boring. You're on a transit across to Sydney to go and play with an Australian submarine off the coast. 2 hours there, 2 hours back, and 8 hours on task. You would be doing an open ocean surveillance from Perth all the way up to Sri Lanka, or Cocos Island, then Cocos Island, Sri Lanka, before you go into Butterworth. And you're just watching open ocean, open water, looking for whatever's there. So there's that side of it. But the camaraderie, the professionalism, what would attract young people today into the military? I think the military today is different than what I experienced. So let's just put that to the side. But it teaches you, it pushes you, it challenges you with your learning, your skill set, your leadership skills. It's seriously growth orientated. And so from my perspective, I just received so much self-gratification. So I am the person that I am today because of what I did then. Leading teams of people. We would land, and there were 13 crew on a P3. So we would land in Perth, and someone would say, "Oh, doesn't Marc Chariot live in Perth?" "Oh, yeah, he does." "Okay, well, it's called an Alpha Strike." "Alpha Strike." "What's that?" Someone would ring Marc 5 minutes out. "Marc, are you at home?" "Yeah, I'm at home." "Okay, look, do you mind if I drop in for a beer?" 13 of us would drop in for a beer. It was great.
Fun,
Seriously. And we did international competitions. So the excitement, the success, but you're honing your skill. We were the tip of the spear. And so as you grow through that, and no one in industry understood it. What are you doing going away for 6 weeks out of Malaysia? So when we were doing called Operation Gateway, we were stationed at Malaysia for 6 weeks, flying out of Butterworth, and we're flying either to the Spratly Islands off in South China Sea or out to Sri Lanka along the Iron Highway. At that period, that decade, Russia was shipping some of the latest military hardware to Africa, to Middle East, and they were all on ships. So we'd see a container ship that had 3 or 4 submarines on it, or fighters or warships. So the Western intelligence system, satellites weren't as strong in those days, had a gap in the picture of what was happening, pretty much from Singapore to Sri Lanka. And that was the role Australia played. Very, very valuable role. So in that period, we came across a Russian aircraft carrier, and we were a single aeroplane, and they launched 2 fighters. So these 2 floggers. Anyway, they came and they hacked us and they tried to put us in the water. And so although we weren't at war, it was as real as you could possibly think. And we experienced that.
Which year is that?
Oh, that would have been in the 80s. That would have been in the 80s.
So the conflict has never gone away.
The Cold War was the Cold War between Russia and Australia. And that brings us to a really good point right now. Digital transformation. Mm-hmm. So one of our biggest trading partners is China. Mm-hmm. Right? China as a state group is cyber hacking and attacking Australian industry business are sanctioned all the time. Mm-hmm. The 2 biggest threats to Australian industry and government is China and Russia. Yet China's our friends. We've had thousands, hundreds of thousands of their students coming through here doing Australian courses, getting to know us. They're part of our culture. We're multicultural. If you don't know someone with a Chinese background in Australia, you're a rare person. They're lovely, they're friendly, they're smart, they're brilliant. They are really nice people. Yet that country is attacking us on a regular basis. State attack, right? Russia. Okay, Russia is our enemy. It's enemy to the West. It was in the Cold War. They're attacking everybody that's Western. So they attack us, UK, US. Everyone knows that Russia's the bad pot. India have more scale. A friend of mine was talking. India has large companies of call centers that's prime focus is to scam people. So the trade commissioner. One of my friends was at a conversation where the US trade commissioner was talking to an Indian trade commissioner, and the US guy. And this is anecdotal, so don't take me to court. The US guy said, "Oh, look, we export a lot to India." And the Indian goes, "Oh, that's really good. Yes, of course." And he goes, "Fraud. I think it's about $3 trillion in fraud." Wow. And he goes, "Well, what do you mean by that?" Well, the Indian call centers that target the elderly in America has an impact on the American economy. And so when you look around the cyber threat, regardless of who it is, whether it's out of Nigeria, or there are elements around the world that are really aggressive at scamming and disrupting and that cyber threat as we move to this digital age. Mm-hmm. And so AI and machine learning is going to even make it more prevalent. There's a really good program that I would recommend your viewers watch. It's called The Undeclared War. Mm-hmm. It's a 4-part series, and it's really about cyber influence, how one state can influence another state really negatively. And it's been done so simply. So when you watch that, you sit back and go, wow, it's that easy, and it's that easy. So all the concerns about fake information, fake blogging, that's all real. And that's a part of 2020. And I've got no idea what it's going to look like in 2030. But if you go back to the 1980s, we didn't have a mobile phone. Now, if you don't have a mobile phone, what's wrong with you? You pay everything with a mobile phone, and if you don't have two, you've got dual SIM. So and the population today have their persona everywhere. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. I was on these. So everything I do is me. Well,
the identity part.
The identity part. So if you're out there in a public way, agencies using AI can get to know everything about you, where you are, even ping your phone. So where are you today? Oh, I'm in lot 14. Why? Because my phone has pinged off the nearest tower and whatever, and they can find me to be here right now. So law enforcement agencies are using digital stealth to crack big cases, and they're doing really, really, really well from that perspective. But it's a chicken and egg case. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
So at the moment, let's talk about digital transformation and AI in industry.
So again, I mean, let's just rephrase the question for the audience. So because you mentioned you're working with an AI company at the moment, so you're a vice president of an AI company.
Yes.
We're gonna tap into that. Whereas also you just mentioned with all the cyber attacks and also digital transformation, there is going to be a change about the impact of defense as a whole through the society, because all of this goes on the branch of the, defense. So defense is not just building missiles and submarines and, ships anymore. It's going to impact all of us as a whole. The way we live. So I want to twist the question back to you in a way that how do you see AI in defense is going to transform our way of way of being?
A really powerful question. So defense is risk averse.
Correct.
Leadership is risk averse. The leadership of defense is my vintage. Not your vintage, not the vintage of 2 or 3 generations below us, which, I didn't get born with an iPad in my hand. Do you know what I mean? So the kids today, they have iPads, they have phones, mobile phones. They play and break and know that software is just software. You can break it and whatever, all of that sort of stuff. And they're growing up with OpenChatGPT. 12 months ago, we didn't have OpenChatGPT. So, and with all the cyber attacks going on, leadership across industry, every industry, is just a wee bit, whoa. This AI and machine learning, it's moving too fast. So if you look at the curve of adoption of AI, you can either be an early adopter, a midstream adopter, or a late adopter. AI is moving so fast. Machine learning is moving so fast. So if you look at defense is risk averse. They're a management set of directors and generals and executives that are aware of cybersecurity and the threat of that, but aren't quite ready to launch into AI and ML. However, their sensors are. So if you look at a drone these days that Iran sent, or it's between Russia and Ukraine, they're really sneaky smart things. They've got small chips on them that can identify that's a tank, so attack that tank. That's a fuel carrier, attack that fuel carrier. So you've got decision making at the sensor, which is really smart.
Yes.
You've got an airborne early warning aircraft that can detect and identify, a speed of sound missile. It says, it's that specific missile. Why? Because the speed of assessment or analysis caused by large language model assistance happening very, very quickly at the edge is just incredible. So defense is buying that on its systems.
At the components level.
At the component level and at the software level for that weapon system. Correct. Right? For example, the F-35 fighter.
Yep.
So I wear this pin. So some of the audience may have seen this pin. So why do I wear a jet pin? Because I was in defense. No. This is an F-22 Raptor, which is a US old fighter. We've bought the F-35 Lightning. The F-35 Lightning can't see or kill this. But America never sold anybody the F-22. So why do I wear the pin? I wear the pin because when I put my suit jacket on, it reminds me every single day that I've got to be the fighter pilot in the seat, flying my business at the speed of sound like Maverick. If Maverick in Top Gun took his eyes off the aircraft for a minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, his aircraft is basically out of control. So when you're in business and business leadership, that reminds me every single day, how can I maximize my value to you? What am I looking for? What's my flight plan? So with Trellis Data, I mentored them when I was in the Centre for Defence Industry Capability as a senior defence industry advisor. A young couple with deep IT experience in 2016 wanted to build a company that had true explainability with large language models, and they wanted it to be sovereign, they wanted it to be Australian, and they wanted it to be secure, and that's Trellis Data. So when they found out last October that I was leaving federal government, they rang me straight away and said, Marc, would you be my vice president of, would you come on board and do our brokering? And of all the companies I've seen, and I've seen 300, 400, 500 companies that I've worked with, Trellis Data was the diamond in the stack. This company could be $1 billion company in 3 to 5 years, and I'll get them there for that. So what have they got? So now, before I go that, we'll leave that to later, can we? I'll come back to your question about defence and the generals. So with the advent 12 months ago of Open Chat GPT, which sits on the web and is not secure, if you upload a document into that, it's got it and it keeps it and other people can see it. So most companies say to their interns and their new grads that join them, don't put any of our ware on OpenChatGPT. Why? Because we don't know where it goes, and it's not risky. And it's risky. And in a defence environment, that's the same. When you look at, I think the Australian Institute of Company Directors did a survey across all industry directors, and a lot of your viewers will be directors or aspiring to be directors. It found that 60, 70, 80% of directors were knowledgeable about AI in their business. They wanted digital transformation in their business, but they didn't know the risks, so they weren't doing anything. So the companies that understand the risk of secure AI, ML in the business processes and adopt now will be light years ahead in a year or two's time than these others that adopt lately. So what we've been saying to defence is, defence, you need to adopt secure AI right across your defence force. 80,000 people. Make secure chat available to 80,000 people from day one, and that way the entire defence force grows up with rapid report writing, really good AI-enabled assistance. What's a good example here? So a defence contractor was writing a defence complex bid. It took 3 bid writers 5 weeks. They did a trial against our software, and it took 1 person 3 days. More than a 70% savings when you use secure Gen AI. And that's one of the products that Trellis offers. So Trellis has a brain, which is the LLM model. It's a bit like a 12-year-old brain. It's ready to learn everything and anything. And you just feed it and it grows on its own. And there's 3 products out of that. There's a secure chat, there's speech translation to translation, and translation to transcription, and transcription back to speech of about 100 languages. Really, really powerful. And then there's vision, which is facial recognition, the vision that the scanner at the Adelaide airport would see when the bags go through, object detection, and a whole range of different things. So they're the 3 products that Trellis is putting to the market, and they're by far leading edge, leading world products, and they even beat the big guys in some of the benchmarking. So if you offer that sort of state-of-the-art AI capability to a defence force, it's at least a 5 times capability uplift. And for example, in the Department of Defence, if you have a reason to be seen to be aggrieved by the Department of Defence, you write to the Minister. Dear Minister, yada, yada, yada. This is a ministerial correspondence that I want, and that I want an answer to. So the Minister hands it down. Hey, Defence, well, what about this? Get me some answers so that I can come back and, in the public eye, with compassion and all of that, answer this person. The researching and report writing that goes into those ministerial requests are significant, and it's a big drain on Defence. Freedom of Information Act, right? So you say, well, how many employees in the Department of Defence are from I don't know, an Indigenous background? Okay, so find the numbers. Where is that? Takes a significant amount of resources. Generative AI can do that really, really quickly. So the secure chat that Trellis has can review 1 million documents in a second. Mm. For facial recognition, it can compare your face with 25 million other faces in 1/4 of a millisecond. It's fast. And write reports. It's brilliant at writing reports. And everyone that's listening here or watching this podcast has probably tried Copilot, ChatGPT, Gemini, all of the open AI, the AI accelerators out there. They're such a powerful tool, but all of them are a little bit risky. And Trellis offers the only one that's secure enough for the defence perspective. So going back to industry.
Sorry, just to hold you there, because we got a promise from you that we're going to have another session at least, just talk about
your audience might not want another session with me.
No, the reason because we have started the podcast talk show talking about AI.
Yes.
And at some point we stopped it. And now I think it's a good point to get back to it, because we're trying to engage the industry into this discussion and talking about why specifically the rate of adaptation of the AI in Australia is really low, okay? And what are the factors? So that's for another session. You mentioned about the industry.
Yes.
And specifically defense industry that you are prominently active in there. And considering that Australia is in a partnership with the US and UK about a range of technologies, and on top of the list are nuclear submarines. And I know that's sort of your bread and butter based on your background and,
yes.
and the story that you said. And you are running a submarine summit. Can you just tell us what it is?
Sure. So this goes straight to leadership, personal conviction, and going out on the ledge for something that you believe. So I hunted submarines for 15 years. I have a high respect for the Western submarine commanders that ran those boats. There were some submarines that were Australian, that we were attacking and tracking, and the guys got away. They were bloody good.
Oh, wow.
Right? Seriously. And then there were the American nuclears, so Los Angeles and a whole range of other classes. And so I was chosen to go and do the advanced acoustic course in Canada, 6 weeks learning how to really find a bit like Jonesy out of Hunt for Red October. The young people watching this won't get that. Yeah. But the acoustic engineer that finds that little bit of a signature off that boat that gives you the contact. And I was also a commanding officer of the Australian Joint Acoustic Analysis Centre. So that was putting our submariners in harm's way. I was a member of some sensitive councils in federal government that were deciding where we were going to send our submarines, what type of sensors we were going to put on the submarines, and were we putting them in harm's way, or were they just exercising with Western forces? And so I had a really close connection with submariners. Our submariners. Now, most of your audience won't know a submariner. They might do. They're a very rare breed, and they go to sea for very long periods of time in a Coke can, under the water, under pressure, led by a CO. Whether they like him or hate him, he's got to keep them safe. And our submarines are good. So when I was on the squadrons, we were involved with the Defence Science and Technology Organisation over some of the systems that they're putting on this new Australian submarine called Collins. So very, very deeply entwined with that. So we built a brilliant submarine. So for whatever the audience thinks about the Collins class submarine, it is undetectable when it wants to be silent and not found. It is Australia's most strategic asset. When the enemy or anybody else doesn't know where one of our submarines are, it strikes fear in them. Even in exercises in Hawaii, the RIMPAC exercises, where our submarine is an aggressor or an enemy to the American warship fleet, they can still get in all the submarine screens, all the frigate screens, and attack the aircraft carrier. It's been done multiple times. So our submariners are seriously skilled and really, really good. And we're looking to replace the Collins class. Mm-hmm. So in 2014, we had the Prime Minister, Abbott, Tony Abbott at that stage, was on a bandwagon to change, to exchange a free trade agreement with Japan for 12 Australian submarines. 8 or 12, doesn't really matter the number. And in all of 2014, it was, we're getting Japanese submarines, we're getting Japanese submarines, we're getting Japanese submarines. We never choose a defence asset like that. We never trade a submarine for a free trade agreement. Now, on the books financially, it may have been a brilliant trade. However, our submariners, we have a submarine for 30 to 50 years. Mm. It's got to be good. It's got to be the best one. And our submarine works in really hot water, the equatorial waters, very, very hot. It's got to go a very long way. Otherwise, you just shoot the tanker. What's that tanker doing out there? Obviously going to feed a submarine. So shoot the tanker and then the submarine's got nowhere to get fuel. So our submarines are built to go very, very long way. That's what keeps Australia safe. So a lot of the young people these days, they don't understand why we need a defence force. Why do you need to spend money on that? It's a deterrent. It's not, we don't want to go to war. We don't want to fight. But if a fight comes to you, you need to be prepared. And you need to be prepared enough to be able to hold your own in that fight. So Tony Abbott wanted Japanese submarines, Japanese submarines, Japanese submarines. And I came from a submarine intelligence background, and there was not a lot known of the submarine class that was being offered to Australia. So there is an organisation called the Submarine Institute of Australia, and these guys are the submariners that ran boats and were involved, and they had their association. Mm-hmm. And so I raised this conference with the Royal United Services Institute and Hargraves Institute, and we were going to raise this conference in Adelaide to talk about the future submarine. It was going to cost about $250,000. We didn't have that money. We were hoping that enough interest in people paying to get tickets would fund that. That's a different story. We'll talk about that in a minute. And so we put this conference on, and straight away I got a phone call from the Submarine Institute of Australia. It said, Marc, we know you like submarines and you're an air, but this is our part of ship, bugger off. And they had a big submarine conference in November 2014. And I said, okay, are you guys going to take it to the minister? And they said, we're going to deal with it with the minister. Anyway, so I was watching the Perth papers during their conference. Nothing, nada, zero. No comment at all about the Japanese submarine decision. And so I rang them up and I said, what happened? And they said, we were told not to touch the subject or else. So we didn't touch the subject. I thought, bugger, I was going to put mine on in October. You told me not to. And now you had yours in November or whatever. And so we raised it for March 2015. Now, for your audience, I had no financial backing. We were doing something seriously crazy because we put on a submarine summit to bring this issue with what Abbott wanted to do to a head. We had, and we wrote to Abbott and said, would you talk on the conference? And he said yes. Now, defence conferences, Prime Ministers never talk at. We were the first defence conference ever that an Australian Prime Minister was going to open. And Bill Shorten was the opposition leader. And Bill Shorten said, we invited him as well as a counter offer. And he said, yes, he would come. And we had a brilliant range of speakers. And the competition at that stage was TKMS from Germany, brilliant submarine. Naval Group from France had an offering, but it was sort of the Clayton's bid. The Japanese, which we knew nothing about, and there were a couple of other contenders. And at that stage, we knew nothing about the Japanese submarine. So we invited 2 Japanese admirals, contacted some defence attaché staff that we knew that had relationships in Japan, and we had 2 admirals come out. One that had run the Japanese submarine fleet, very experienced, and one that ran the entire fleet, including the Japanese submarine fleet. And bearing in mind, Japan is sitting very close to Russia, so they're right in that Axis power, and submarine intelligence for them was really at a high level. So we brought these 2 Japanese admirals down because no one in Australia had even spoken or been spoken to about the capability of the Japanese submarine. So they came down. Now, most people buy conference tickets in the last week.
Wow.
So when you're committed for so much money to pay the convention centre, organise the program, put the food on. You have that experience. Yeah. Well, it's scary, and anyway, so we eventually got, and these 2 Japanese admirals had to come out business class. So there was nearly 20,000 just bringing 2 people out, and this was 2015, so that was a lot of money. Wow. And so we ran this conference. Now, what really surprised us is that there were 13 news agencies there from around the world, including Al Jazeera. What the hell is Al Jazeera doing in Australia, looking at a submarine conference? We had more spies than you can poke a stick at from just about every nation in the region. We had some American guys that came that didn't exist anywhere. Oh, I'm John Doe. Oh, really? John Doe? What a great name. John Doe, he doesn't exist. I'm coming to your conference. Okay, so we had a few of those types. Electric Boat and the people involved with submarines. It was a brilliant conference, except I think our conference was on the Wednesday or the Thursday. So on the Monday, Malcolm Turnbull did the first spill attempt on Abbott challenge. And Abbott stayed in Canberra that week. And he said, Marc, I'm really sorry, can't come to your conference. My prime ministerialship is at stake. Totally understood that. But Bill Shorten did. He came. And Abbott sent his Defence Minister, Johnson, at that stage. And Johnson did a good job. Bill Shorten did a stunning job. And the point of the conference, it was a 2-day conference, the point of the conference was, had 3 outcomes. If Australia was going to select a submarine for our submariners for the next 30 years, it must be the best contender in an open and transparent competition. First point. Second one is, if we do select an Australian submarine, it should be built in Australia. And third one, if you're going to build in Australia, build it in Adelaide. And we won all 3. So out of that conference, the French eventually won. Now, they had the weakest offering at our conference, yet they won. So I'm not quite sure how that went. You'd have to talk to the politicians and the senior defence as to the French offering. It was going to be built in Australia, and it was going to be built in Adelaide. So tick, tick, tick. So it was about $250,000. And when it comes to, it would have been easy not to do that conference. And when we got shot down in flames for October, it would have been easy not to do that conference. It would have been easy not to bring the admirals out for a really good discussion. We were talking, I was a nobody in those days, and I was writing to prime ministers, getting prime ministers to come down. I was writing to Japanese admirals, please come down and talk at our conference. And it was exceedingly successful. And it was done by a couple of individuals that backed it. Royal United Services Institute, which didn't have a lot of money, said, Marc, I like the idea, we'll go with that. Hargraves Institute, which is a leading edge technology company out of Sydney, they said, yes, we'll support you on that. And we got enough, I think at the end of the day, we're about $15,000 or $20,000 short out of a $250,000 conference. And we changed the landscape of the Australian submarine pick, because Abbott was clearly chosen that the Japanese submarine was not the right submarine for us, and for a whole host of reasons. And the contest became clearer and more transparent. So for your listeners, there are times in your life when you can go that extra mile and achieve great things, serious things, for your country and for what you believe in if you take that next step. Now, I don't see that a lot in leaders. You see it in some, and when you see it, it just stands out. Oh, wow. And that's a wow factor. And, you know, it's putting yourself on the line for what's right and what you think is right. And we do see that a lot from a lot of the young people, and it's just brilliant. But have the courage to get some advice, talk to someone with wisdom. And, you know, if they say, no, don't do that. So out of that, it was very successful. I was on a high. We just delivered a national conference of significance to Australia. What's next? Mm-hmm. And one of my mates that helped me with that is a guy called David Hurst. He's doing a PhD, an ex-intelligence officer. And he's sort of got the unique ability to string dots together that no one else can see. And he said to me in 2015, he said, Marc, uncontrolled immigration in Europe is going to go ballistic this summer. There's such a refugee crisis in Northern Africa. There's going to be waves and waves and waves of tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people moving into Europe. Europe's not ready for it. The Coast Guards aren't ready for it. It's going to be the next biggest thing. So we put on a conference called Migration for 2016. We had threats so many threats. The AFP contacted us and said, shut your conference down, do this, do that. It's too politically a hot potato. And we were doing it in Adelaide. We had Antonio Guterres, who was going to come and speak. Right? Mm. He's now the Secretary General. We had a list of speakers that were absolutely stellar, world class, to come to Adelaide to talk about migration control. And we had Christmas Island, Nauru, and we were offshoring a lot of people. So it's a highly emotive conference. So we had 3 ambassadors coming, and the threats that came in were significant enough for us to say, stop, we'll put this on hold. Because Malcolm Turnbull had won at that stage, and he brought an election on, and that election was going to be around the time of our conference, and the whole point of the conference was going to be stolen by those that were politically motivated about refugee and how Australia handles them. So it was going to be stolen away. So we deferred that, and at the end of that year we did another conference, because we also saw that the biggest issue in the mid-20s will be mobility and skills. Everybody's going to run out of skilled labour. So we said, okay, let's do this transferred conference, because we had sunk a lot of money into the Adelaide Convention Centre, and they let you defer it for a little while. And our backers and our sponsors were also at risk, so we deferred it for them. And we did a global conference on mobility and skills, because we saw in the early 2020s, getting the right people with the right qualifications across all industry is going to be really, really hard. And we foresaw that back in 2016. And what's the biggest issue in industry here right now? Mobility and skills. We're importing.
And it's not going to go away.
It's not going to go away, and it's a bottomless pit at the moment.
Yes.
You know, we've opened up our borders significantly, and qualified people are coming in droves, and it doesn't even touch the lack of skill sets that we've got. COVID stopped the university students coming through in droves. So and it's everywhere around the world. So in defence, even the defence primes. The primes, the big guys in defence industry, have said they've come to an agreement. Don't rob each other of your own resources. So if I'm Lockheed Martin, I don't come to BAE Systems and say, look, I want your engineer. Hey, engineers, come and work for us. We'll pay you a little bit more than BAE. Because it's a vicious circle. You go from BAE to Lockheed and you get a $10,000 pay rise. And then BAE can't do their job, so they offer you $5,000 more. So you go back to BAE or Lockheed Martin somewhere. So it was a vicious circle. And what you're seeing now is you're seeing the perfect storm, where you've got economic pressures like you wouldn't believe. Out of COVID, there was non-supply of construction industry.
Yes.
And so the building prices went through the roof. You've got industry partners falling over left, right and centre. And the pressures on the young to get into housing, to how to invest, how to get that dream job. You know, it's seriously high powered at the moment. And so the opportunities for employment have never been better than before, but the prices of everything is as high as I've seen it. for rental from
I
that.
have a feeling that this is one of those topics that we want to talk to you, because we want to actually run a series of sessions about geopolitics.
Yes.
How we are evolving as a nation, how Australia is going to look like, and it's not just one person's vision. I think it's our it's individuals' visions that needs to come together.
Yes.
That we as a nation,
Yes.
where are we going?
Yes.
But as you mentioned, there's a lot of pressure on the society, especially on younger people, and a lot of these people at my generation or younger, the major question is, why are we spending on defense? Why defense? And why are we doing things here? Which comes back to our value prepositions.
Yes.
As a society, what we value, because
Yes.
we are protecting something here that it's important,
Yes.
and what that thing is.
Yes.
My understanding, I myself, I came here to Australia in 2012. So, and I have learned a lot. So, to me, that value proposition sort of ties back to what happens in Anzac.
Yes.
And because we're also close to Anzac Day next week, I know the history.
Yes.
But I don't think I can sort of pay enough attention. It's like similar to you or to
Yes.
your story, or
Yes.
what you can tell, especially to younger generations.
Yes.
Because the more senior people, they probably know that. But what is the story? How it ties to our value system?
Yeah. So Anzac Day. So I'm ex-military, so I'm biased. So I have a reason. I'm also older generation, so I'm tied back. So if I put a leadership lens on what would I say to young people, young Australian people. So firstly, we're seriously multicultural. We're more multicultural now than I've ever seen it. So of your audience, I'm not sure what percentage of them would be white Australian male or white Australian female. And what does that even mean? So if you're now a citizen and got permanent residency and citizenship, you're an Australian. And you bring the values from your country that are immune in you by your parents and your grandparents, and you bring them in here, and this is the benefit of Australia. We're a multicultural melting pot of a range of views and politics and relations overseas and international connectivity. So first question is, why do we need a defence force? So our defence force is quite meagre, really, for the size of the country. Mm-hmm. But when you look at the size of the population, we're about right. There's about 80,000 in the Defence Force for 27, 28 million people. The resources that are put, we spend a lot of money on advanced training and weapon systems so that we can protect Australia if it's threatened. Now, some people say, China might attack Australia and invade. I don't think anyone would want to invade Australia. I just don't. I think there are other ways in this current world that you can do that. Countries can buy up your farms and that secures their food stock for them. Countries can do this and can do that, and they can put politicians in place that have a bias towards another nation to do another nation's will. So all of that's on the tables. But Australia is one of those really safe places in general. Has good values. There's no guns here. You walk down the street, you don't expect anyone's going to pull a gun on you or a knife. Admittedly, there's been some recent things, but Australia is safe, and the quality of life in Australia is generally good compared to other places. And our immigration model it suits the Australian government at the time. So it used to be a lot of Chinese, now it's a lot of Indians, along with a lot of other refugees, and it's a melting pot because that's who we are. And we've got our Indigenous people. So is defence necessary? Absolutely. If there's a bully on the block, you need at least to be able to stand up to the bully. Our Defence Force can stand up to a bully. Mm-hmm. So it's the culture of the Defence Force is just wonderful. The raison d'etre is to detect, deter, and defend. It's not aggressive. We've never really been an aggressor. I can't remember anywhere where Australia attacked another country for its own reason. Now, Turkey's a good example, Anzac. So Anzac, we were in a British coalition and we attacked Turkey. So a lot of people don't realise that we were the aggressors to Turkey in Anzac, in the Anzacs. So Anzac Cove has a special place. But Australian and New Zealand forces fought bravely against a nation that was defending its sovereignty on the worst hill and embankments that they possibly could. And it's said there that Anzac conflict made the Australian spirit, the Australian culture, an essence to who we are. And I strongly believe that. Now, a lot of the immigrants, internationals that have become Australians since that sort of war would have seen Anzac Day, but may not have quite got the essence of it. But they will over time. We honour it every year because it's those young. Now back in 1914, when there was a call to arms to go to fight in Europe, these young guys, we'd never been at war before. These young guys, the young farmers, the young guys say, "Oh yeah, we'll go." Some people even lied about how young they were just to become a soldier and go and fight. Go and fight. And so a lot of mothers and fathers lost their sons. It was a tragedy for a whole range of nations. And I think one of the most empowering speeches I've ever come across, and for your audience you should look this up, Ataturk, who was the ruler in Turkey following the war there, said to Australia, "All your mothers that have lost your sons in this battle, they're now in the bosom of Turkey, and I'll look after them that way." It's probably the most moving speech I've ever come across in history. A bit up there with Kennedy, up there with Martin Luther King from that perspective. So the Ataturk speech was absolutely incredible, and it grew the essence of what Australia is today. So how do you honour that? So I have a small gift for you, Marc.
Oh, thank you.
This is a 1915 Australian penny. So it's not worth a lot. It's a 1 penny coin. This would have been in the coin purses of the mothers or the fathers or the grandparents. It could have been in the fob pocket of the soldiers that were going to Anzac. This is it's not a valuable coin, but from an emotional perspective, from a perspective of relevance, it's probably one of the most iconic things that you can give to any defence member, is tie them back to Anzac Day. There's very, very few defence people that would even have a 1915 penny.
Thank you.
What it does is it should bring to you, what Anzac Cove was all about from that perspective. So for the listeners, what's Anzac about? It's a celebration of what it really means to be Australian. So what is that? It's courage. It's trust in your leaders. It's doing the right thing at the right time under the right environment, even though there's a lot of proponents and a lot of naysayers that say, that wasn't the case. But Anzac Day pretty much led into World War I, which then led into World War II, and then we've had the Korean War, then we've had the Vietnam War. And so Australia has been embroiled in a lot of active service. And you know what? The soldiers don't put their hand up. Say, hey, I'll go to that one. I'll go to Vietnam. It was a matter of, we need soldiers to go to Vietnam. The government of the day says, you're going to Vietnam. So none of the Defence Force, who are highly trained and highly skilled, put their arms up for conflict. What they've done is they're an element of the government's instrument to either support our partners, our coalition partners or whatever, but to be involved or not involved from that perspective. So it's a real honour to have been in the Defence Force, but I did it for 15 years, about 20 years, I suppose I was in for. and then I left it. And it's something that lives with you forever. The training, the thirst for learning, the challenging you. So, okay, so you're a squadron leader now. Now go and command that new squadron. Oh, I haven't done that before. And it forces you to grow. So defence forces people. And you see the ads on TV right at the moment, you know, a young woman that's flying a big jet or a helicopter or a tank, you know, exciting images on TV to attract. Good marketing spin. But I can tell you, I've not been in a single industry where the binding power between myself and my crew and my squadrons, I've not seen that in industry. So I've worked for the Olympic Games Flames Company, I've worked for Hendon Semiconductor, I've worked for probably 20 different companies as an employee, and that bond, that special bond that is developed in the military, I've not found anywhere else. And so defence industry is quite special from that perspective. But I think the general Australian young people don't realise how essential a defence force is to their way of life. You know, no one's going to attack Australia because, you know, some people say, oh, Indonesia's going to attack Australia. Indonesia's our friends. We have high-level military cooperation with Indonesia. There's 300 million people, 12,000 islands to 20,000 islands to the north of us, right, that are our friends and our neighbours. Malaysia, if you look at anywhere in our area, we have good, close defence ties. We're not a threat. How can we help train you? How can, you know, what do you want from us? You know, we have operations. Operations here, defence operations, where Singapore, Brunei, Indonesia, Malaysia send their fighters down, and we have a war game to grow the skills of our partners so that they understand us. We're not a threat to anybody. But if there's a bully on the block and they're doing something that's not right, and there's a call to arms to go and defend that, Australia's been pretty good at doing that. Now, in hindsight, you might say, well, we should have done that or we shouldn't have done that. But at the time, when those decisions are made, it appeared to be the right thing at the right time. So Defence Force pretty much protects our way of life. We're looking at buying nuclear submarines. We've never had a nuclear... You know, if Scott Morrison didn't make that deal on that day the way he did, he took a big gamble. And he said, I'm killing the French one, and we've been speaking to the US, and we're going to get nuclear submarines. We've never, ever, ever even contemplated nuclear warships or submarines ever before. It's against the Australian vernacular. But with the rise of the threat in China, with Middle East fading into distance, the geopolitical scenario was, well, we've got to do something. And this was the right decision. So I come from a submarine background, so the question is, are nuclear submarines a good choice for Australia? Absolutely. We should have had them 20, 30 years ago. But the Australian population psyche was anti-nuclear for whatever reason at that stage. Nuclear weapons? Absolutely not. Not interested in nuclear weapons. We should never have them. It's not part of our strategy, not part of our structure. But nuclear submarines? Absolutely. Why? Because we've got to get the submarines to the areas that they're needed fast. During one of the big operations, a Russian spy ship appeared up off Cairns. Right? We should have had a submarine trailing it. We couldn't get one there fast enough. And so you can't defend if your submarine is slow. Our submarine is so quiet, so stealthy, but it is slow. And so you can't react quickly. So having nuclear submarines based out of Perth, great idea. And look, the US and the UK have been very, very safe with their operations and security around nuclear power points. They're getting smaller, they're getting faster, they're getting more high-tech, they're getting safer and safer and safer. Will there be an accident? Who knows? Has there been accidents? I'm not sure. I'm not privy to that. But as a submarine choice for Australia now, I believe it's the right choice. Leaving the French submarine, I think the French submarine was chosen because it was a nuclear looking powered submarine that would be fitted with a conventional engine, which means at some point we could take the conventional engine out and put a nuclear power point in, and then you've got a nuclear submarine capacity. But that didn't work out. It was getting way too expensive, way too fast, and they hadn't even started cutting metal. So the reason the French lost it, I'm not privy to. Was it a good decision? I'm not privy to that either. I just know that we're now looking at in 20 years having nuclear submarine capability, which I think is Australia needs in the new way of doing business. And I think that will probably be the last manned or staffed or human style of vessel. So within another 10, 20 years, they'll all be autonomous, as they are now.
Let's keep that there, because I believe that, again, with the depth of knowledge that you have, it needs another session, because I was about to ask you a question about the...
So your audience will have to get 2 or 3 of their friends to watch it, so that the audience explodes, because I'm a tenfold guy. So I challenge you to get your audience to bring 9 other people at the next time they tune in this podcast.
We will probably have to open these sessions to the public and see who is interested. But before I will continue, thank you very much. This means a lot to me.
Very well. So when you're 90,
yes,
and you're going through your little cufflinks box of trinkets, and you see that, you'll remember that crusty old defence guy that gave it to you on the podcast.
You're not crusty.
But it is probably...
You're a very close friend.
It's probably one of the most valuable gifts I could give to anybody.
This means a lot to me, and I wanted to say that Australia is a place. I came here when I was 20, and you become an adult at 21, I believe. I became an adult in Australia, and I've learned a lot, and Australia is a place which gave me a wing. And I've lived in different places before I come to Australia. So one thing, between everything that you were mentioning about Anzac Day and the culture, one thing that came to my mind is the value of the mateship. And the freedom of respecting everyone, and respecting everyone as equals, and which is something that between the lines of what you were mentioning about Anzac Day, which those values builds trust, and out of trust builds the relationships, and then with the relationships you can build industries, you can build technologies, you can build culture. Knowing you have a lot of relationships in Adelaide, and Australia and overseas. And part of the reasons that we started this talk show podcast was we wanted to activate the local ecosystem. And we wanted to spotlight the talented people in Adelaide, the people outside the industry or outside this this city may not know about them. Because sometimes they're like, Adelaide, what is Adelaide? Where is Adelaide? Like, what are you guys doing down there? And the reason that we started this, we wanted to actually spotlight on people and bring them up and show and activate try to help activating the ecosystem and these people. And part of that is that we do impact each other at the local level, and I love Adelaide because of that, because everyone is really accessible, in a way that I can get hold of them, I can learn from them. If I want to actually help the community, it's much easier for me to actually become part of the community and try to add value or learn. In that regard, I know you have a long list of people. Who do you look up? Who do you suggest that we could bring to the podcast as a guest? And it doesn't need to be one person.
Yeah, I totally understand that.
That could potentially add to your discussion if we were going to have a series of discussions. Who are those people?
So I'm a very experienced deep networker, and for the audience, the rule that I've used is if you want to touch an industry or touch an organisation, go to the top. And at conferences, when someone says to me, "Oh, that's the managing director of BHP," people say to me, "Oh, you can't go and talk to that person." What I've learnt is that everyone is just a person, so they're just on a different journey. So if you're a prime minister, I've spoken to Tony Abbott one-on-one. Antonio Guterres, the UN secretary, I've had many conversations with him one-on-one before he even had that position. My colleagues are now Chief of Defence Force, were Chief of Air Force, so my cohort through that industry were the tops. People wouldn't even talk to them from that perspective. And so the first lesson I would give to your audience is that strive to touch as many people in your journey as you can as a leader, and reach out for those at the top. I've found that most people never say no, unless you're trying to sell them something, and then they just see through that, and that's rubbish. But if you want to talk to a department, then reach out to the CEO if it's worthy enough. Mentors. So I've had mentors in my life. Most people don't have mentors. A mentor guides you. Can you imagine if I was their mentor? So Julie, you're out there. You asked me to mentor you. I'll tell you a couple of things about mentoring. Mentoring is a soft touch. Once a month, once a week. When you've got problems, you ring me up and you're seeking sage advice, wisdom, and usually your mentor will be able to give you that. Usually it's someone that you wouldn't dare even approach, way up high. They're up there. I've never known a mentor to knock back a request. So if I wanted Steve Marshall, Malley to mentor me, I would have a high probability that they'd say yes, but we're very busy. So what is it that you want? They're politicians. There are leaders in industry. There's the head of large corporations, all here in Adelaide, that you could ask to mentor. There's even leadership organisations inside the universities that you could ask for the head of that leadership, Ayana and a few of the others, to mentor you. So ask for a mentor. It's free, and I like that. And usually they don't say no, but usually you're too petrified to ask. And you know what? When you're considering a mentor, you don't even know what you're going to ask them. So most people just don't. But when you ask someone to mentor you, you immediately get sucked surreptitiously into their network. So Marley will say, "Oh, you need to speak to Steve Marshall. He's running MITRE now. Go and speak to Steve. Just tell him I sent you." "Oh, you need to speak to, Forrest. He's Twiggy Forrest. He's made of mine. Just tell him I sent you." And you get a network level at their level and they will very quickly get to know your purpose for wanting to be mentored. And if you're honest and true and of value, you will be mentored. So never be afraid to ask for mentors. So I'll take your point on notice at who can I bring here, because the number of people are numerous, seriously numerous. And ones are not necessarily political, but some are charity organisations. They give from their heart and they do fantastic work in that not-for-profit industry for them. There are others that are sponsoring students to do a whole range of things, bring them out. So let me think about that, and I'll come back to you on that. But one of the people that I would certainly need to raise here would be my wife, Christine Ryan. So she's put up with everything I've put her through, and we have robust discussions about everything I do and not every decision I make, but do you do this and do you do that? And we've been privileged to be together as a partnership, as a marriage, way back since 1979. So it's a lot of years. But she's a tertiary qualified teacher, multi-degree, librarian, and a really good mental sage. So never underestimate the support, the skill set, the manoeuvring that your partner does with you on your journey. So you go to work every day, but the values that you have set at home, the discussions that you have at home are seriously important. And there are times where I've not paid due to that and suffered the consequences. What'd you do that for? I told you not to do that. And it was a dick decision and you did it anyway, and look, you fell on your face. And so don't ever underestimate the value of your partner or your future partner in your journey. And look, we wouldn't have been able to stay together this long and do all the changes. We had 13 moves in 17 years, I think it was. And moving is more stressful than anything else in your life. It tests you to the core. And so when you have a lot of them, you build a relationship that's almost unbreakable. But, marriage is very much like cycles of industry. There are times when, it would be easy to walk away because, it just is, And there are times where you absolutely enjoy everything that life is throwing your way. So at the moment, I'd have to say Christine Ryan would be, she's my
So she's
best
our
member.
next guest, hopefully.
Well, anyway, so she'd be able to tell you all the
we'll
wins and
definitely
all
ask,
the high and lows from the career. But I think your audience should seriously look at the values of who they look up to, who are the leaders that are real leaders, and who are those that are fake. Where someone has got so much, what's the word? So much self-interest. Those people you can see, arrogance. Yes. For the wrong reason. Those people you see that, and you don't want to follow those. But your audience should look up for mentoring and coaching. I think why I'm here today is I've had a continual thirst for learning. I just have to learn. So AI, ML. It's not my AI and ML is not my generation's sphere of comfort. But my God, it's travelling at the speed of light. It's like a bullet train travelling at 500 miles an hour. If you're not on it, by the time you do get on it, my train is 2,000 miles away. So AI and ML does have an element of risk to it. If you've got security, so I'll give you an example, one quick example before we close, and that is Trellis has a universal translator. So what does that mean? Star Trek, right? Star Trek had a universal translator where any alien could speak to any other alien, and for the movies it popped up in English. So we have over 100 languages that are programmed into this box that you can talk to me in Farsi, I will hear it in English, I'll speak back to you in English, and you'll hear it in Farsi. And so Arabic. So if you think of the Olympic Games, so we've approached the Olympic Games. The Olympic Games are in Paris in 100 days. There are going to be 15 million visitors in a couple of months from every place around the planet. There's 200 organisations. There's 30,000 gendarmes, and they might speak French, a bit of English, a bit of German, and maybe a bit of Spanish. That's about it. 20,000 security forces, and there's going to be accidents. There's going to be people hurt that don't speak the language. There's going to be people coming up to the police and say, "Hey, where do I go to there?" So if they had a universal translator on them that said, "Oh, okay, so you're Ugandan. Okay, welcome to Paris. But I'm speaking to you in French, and you're speaking to me in Ugandan, and I've got you." That technology is there right now. We've got it, and it's secure, and we're rolling it out. It's expensive. We're going for organisations, so very, very large. So defence, the embassies, every embassy. Can you imagine if every Australian embassy had a universal translator on the desk? So it didn't matter what culture, background, language a person came in, wanting to talk to Australia about immigration, we talk to them in their first language. With very, very high accuracy. It's above the whisper standard for accuracy. So that's one of the areas. And so if you don't adopt some of these things early on, you get left behind. So for example, there are people out there that don't even have iPads or tablets yet what a massive accelerator to capability that is. Some people haven't tried ChatGPT or Copilot yet. If you haven't tried those, you don't know the capability uplift. So I grow companies. Twofold, fivefold, tenfold. AI, ML right now can grow you and your skill set by 5 or 10 times easy. So if you have to write a complex report and you're not doing it for a secure organisation, it might be a university report. It's amazing how fast that report can come together very, very quickly when you use generative AI to help you. It's such a powerful tool that's there right now. And industry is saying, we don't understand it because we're old generally, or we're risk averse, so we'll wait. but they're losing first movers' opportunity. So if Australia embraced secure generative AI, it would elevate itself well above our economic benchmark right now amongst the nations that we generally work with. Because every nation is taking it slow, because their leaders are old, the leaders are risk averse, and they've got different agendas. But the tool, it's like, what's a good example? So AI now is like the first cars back in the turn of the century. We all had horses. We know horses. That'll never take off. IBM said laptops will never take off. Kodak had the first digital camera. That'll never take off, right? AI, generative AI, let's wait and see where it goes. ChatGPT started 12 months ago, and there was one of them. Now there's probably 500 companies with generative AI. Next year there'll be 1,000. Year after that there'll be 20, 30, 50,000. And ChatGPT has already put 2 or 3 releases out. So as they improve it, it's moving as the language model learns. But it has some risk to it because it's out on the open web. And an example is, what if during the Trump elections, a state actor loads 5 million documents on Trump being a really good guy? Brilliant. Yeah. So when anyone in the US does a search on Trump, the engine is going to find, there's a flood of positive stuff, so I'll feed you positive stuff. When in fact, it's actually not. It's being manipulated. So that security and fake news. So what you'll see now is you'll see fake photographs, really, really clear. We've even seen that on the news with Kate in the UK. If your audience watches the undeclared war, they'll see how easy it is to manipulate people through social media, and we're all on social media. And I think so. We're moving through to an era that is as valuable as technology can give us, but animals will turn it to the worst humankind can develop out of it. Do you know what I mean? There's always, it's like the dark web versus the web. It's that seesaw between good and evil. And at the moment, I'm seeing secure AI as being an absolute slingshot that companies and directors should at least consider for themselves. How secure is that? And what of our assets can we allow it in? So I think this is the biggest transformation that we're seeing. I think so that's that. Will there be conflict? I hope not. But I think the probability of some sort of conflict in the South China Sea within the next 12 to 24 months is starting to heat up, especially if there's anything further in the Middle East. Who would have thought the Middle East would have gone the way it has gone so quickly? Who would have thought Ukraine, Russia would have gone so quickly? So the world is very unstable at the moment. At the same time, Australia is a peaceful, prosperous place that you can learn a lot, experience a lot, and be a really valuable player to the country. So, yeah, for what that's worth.
Look, Marc, we got the promise from you that we're gonna run at least one session with you.
Sure.
This session, because the discussion, I think, I truly not only enjoyed, and it was a pleasure to have you, but I learned a lot, and I think our audience also will enjoy and learn a lot.
Yes.
And the topics that you just touched and moved, and I appreciate that you've been trying fast, but these topics are so deep that we need to dig in each session. But all in all, thank you very much for accepting our invitation in such a short notice. Mm-hmm. And
you're very welcome, Marc. And I hope your audience appreciates the ebb and flow of the conversation.
I enjoyed it, and I hope and I'm sure that they will enjoy it. Thank you very much again.
You're very welcome.
For the gift. We really appreciate this. It is so much valuable for me. It means a lot. Hope we see you again next time here.
You will. Thank you very much, Marc.
Sure, thank you very much.
Appreciate it.